Chosen one, there are seasons when a friendship changes so quietly that you cannot point to the exact day it happened. There was no argument that broke the room in two. There was no final message. There was no dramatic goodbye. There was simply a shift, a reply that became shorter, a warmth that became distant, a celebration that they did not seem able to share with you, a conversation that left you strangely small. And after enough of those moments, you started asking a painful question. Lord, what happened to us? Maybe you have asked it while looking at your phone. Maybe you have asked it after leaving a room where you felt tolerated but not welcomed. Maybe you have asked it after you shared something important and watched their eyes lose interest. Maybe you have asked it after realizing that you have been editing yourself before every conversation. You choose your words carefully. You reduce your joy. You hide your plans. You make yourself less visible. You become easier to manage. Not because you are dishonest, but because part of you is afraid that if you show your full heart, you will lose the connection completely. That kind of pain is real. It deserves more than empty reassurance, but it also deserves more than fear. It deserves wisdom, because not every changing friendship is a betrayal. Not every distant season is evidence that someone is secretly against you. Not every quiet response is a sign of envy. People become tired. People carry private grief. People go through seasons they do not know how to explain. Sometimes a friendship needs a conversation. Sometimes it needs patience. Sometimes it needs forgiveness. And sometimes, with sadness and with grace, it needs a boundary. The goal of this message is not to make you suspicious of everyone around you. The goal is not to turn your heart into a courtroom. The goal is not to teach you to look for enemies in every silence. The goal is to help you recognize the difference between ordinary human distance and a pattern that is slowly asking you to abandon your peace. By the end of this message, I want you to see three things clearly. First, the difference between a moment of tension and a repeated pattern. Second, the difference between love and emotional control. Third, the difference between forgiving someone and giving them unlimited access to your life. Before we go further, let this settle into your spirit. God does not ask you to hate people in order to protect your heart. God does not ask you to become cold in order to become wise. God does not ask you to expose every person who disappoints you. He invites you to become honest. He invites you to become calm. He invites you to become rooted enough in Him that you can tell the truth without becoming cruel. Perhaps that is why this subject hurts so much. A friendship is not a casual thing. In the Four Loves, C.S. Lewis reflects on friendship as one of the great gifts of human life. True friendship is not merely being near another person. It is discovering that someone can stand beside you and care about what is true, good, and meaningful. A true friend does not need you to remain small in order to feel secure. A true friend does not need your pain in order to feel important. A true friend may correct you. A true friend may disagree with you. A true friend may even disappoint you, but they do not consistently pull you away from who God is forming you to become. That is the distinction we must learn, because many people have confused loyalty with self-erasure. They have confused forgiveness with silence. They have confused kindness with allowing every wound to repeat. They have confused peace with keeping everyone comfortable. And in the process, they have lost the quiet strength God was trying to build in them. So take a breath. You do not need to make a decision about anyone while you are panicking. You do not need to send a message while you are angry. You do not need to end a friendship because one moment hurt. You do not need to force a friendship to stay alive because history makes it hard to let go. Today, we are going to slow down. We are going to look at the fruit. We are going to look at the pattern. We are going to ask for wisdom. And we are going to remember that a boundary is not a weapon. A boundary is a door. It tells people how close they may come to the parts of your life that God has entrusted to you. There is a reason Scripture says in Proverbs that we should guard our hearts. It does not say to harden them. It does not say to lock them away from every person. It says to guard them. A guard is not a prison wall. A guard is someone who knows what should be welcomed, what should be questioned, and what should not be allowed to enter. That is what discernment looks like. Discernment is not paranoia. Discernment is peace with open eyes. And maybe that is what God is inviting you into now. Not fear, not bitterness. Open eyes, a steady heart, and the courage to accept that a relationship can be meaningful and still need to change. If any of this is touching something real in your life right now, if you came to this message carrying a name, a face, a feeling you have not known how to describe, let this be your first quiet prayer. Not Lord, expose them. Not Lord, prove I was right. But simply, Lord, show me what is true, including what is true in me. If that is the prayer of your heart today, write, show me what is true in the comments. Let it be a private act of courage between you and God. Let us begin with something important. When a friendship starts to feel different, the mind often rushes to fill in the blanks. Silence feels like rejection. A delayed reply feels like anger. A changed tone feels like hatred. An unanswered invitation feels like proof that you no longer matter. And sometimes, yes, there is a real problem. But sometimes, the pain of old wounds makes the present feel more certain than it really is. This is why wisdom begins with facts. Before you decide that a friend has become unsafe, ask yourself what you actually know. What has happened more than once? What has been said clearly? What do you only fear may be true? This is not a way to invalidate your feelings. Your feelings are signals. They matter. But feelings are not always full explanations. A smoke alarm is valuable because it tells you to pay attention. But you still need to find out whether the smoke came from a burned meal, a small electrical problem, or a serious fire. In the same way, discomfort in a relationship is a signal. It is not always a final verdict. You may feel uneasy because your friend has changed. You may feel uneasy because you have changed. You may feel uneasy because you have been carrying pain from a previous betrayal. You may feel uneasy because both of you are tired and neither of you knows how to speak honestly. Do not dismiss the signal, but do not build a whole story before you have seen the evidence. C.S. Lewis understood how easily fear can take over a mind. In his writings, he often warned that human beings are tempted to become absorbed by anxieties about what may happen next. When fear controls the imagination, it can make a shadow look like a wall. It can make a delayed conversation feel like a final rejection. It can make us react to a story we invented, rather than the relationship that is actually in front of us. So, here is your first discipline. When you sense that a friendship has changed, name the facts without adding accusation. Instead of saying, they do not care about me anymore, say, they have cancelled 3 plans in a row, without suggesting another time. Instead of saying, they are jealous of me, say, when I shared this good news, they changed the subject twice, and later made a comment that felt dismissive. Instead of saying, they are trying to control me, say, they become upset every time I make a decision, without consulting them. Do you hear the difference? One is a conclusion, the other is an observation. Observations allow you to seek truth. Conclusions can trap you inside fear. And this matters because God is not the author of confusion. He can lead you into clarity without leading you into accusation. He can show you a pattern without asking you to assume the worst about every person involved. He can give you a boundary without making your heart cruel. If you have been carrying confusion about a friendship, let this be your second quiet prayer. Not Lord, expose them. Not Lord, prove I was right. But Lord, show me what is true, including what is true in me. That last part is hard, because when we are hurt, we usually want to know what is wrong with the other person. But wisdom also asks, what am I bringing into this? Am I afraid because I have been abandoned before? Am I expecting them to read needs I have never spoken? Am I seeking from this friendship a level of reassurance that only God can provide? Am I holding them to a standard I am not willing to live by myself? These questions do not make your pain less important. They make your discernment more trustworthy. And trustworthy discernment is what protects you from both extremes. It protects you from staying too long in a relationship that is shrinking your soul. And it protects you from walking away from someone who simply needed a season of grace. Now let us talk about the first sign that God may be calling you to create a boundary. The first sign is this: your peace becomes conditional on your compliance. Think carefully about that. Your peace becomes conditional on your compliance. You begin to notice that the relationship is calm only when you act in ways the other person approves of. When you agree with them, everything is warm. When you make yourself available on their schedule, everything is easy. When you affirm their perspective, they are kind. But when you express a different opinion, make a choice they do not control, or say no to something they want, the atmosphere changes. They become cold. They become distant. They become sarcastic. They withdraw affection. They create guilt. They make you feel as though a simple boundary is a betrayal. This does not always happen loudly. In fact, emotional control is often subtle. It may sound like concern. I just do not know why you have changed. I thought we were closer than this. I guess I matter less to you now. I was only trying to help. You are overthinking everything. Those sentences can be harmless in one context, but over time, when they become a pattern, they can train you to abandon your own clarity just to keep the peace. And that is not friendship, that is emotional pressure. A healthy friend may feel disappointed when you say no, but they do not punish you for it. A healthy friend may disagree with your decision, but they do not make you feel guilty for having one. A healthy friend may need more communication from you, but they do not demand access to every corner of your life. This is where many kind people become trapped. They think that if another person feels hurt, they must have done something wrong. But another person's disappointment is not always proof of your disobedience. Sometimes it is simply the discomfort of a boundary being set. Jesus loved deeply, but he did not give equal access to every person. He withdrew to pray. He did not answer every demand. He did not entrust himself to every crowd. He was compassionate without being controlled. And that is a pattern worth noticing. Love does not mean constant availability. Love does not mean surrendering discernment. Love does not mean abandoning responsibilities, convictions, health, or peace in order to prove that you care. In fact, when your love requires you to betray every other responsibility God has given you, it has stopped being love. It has become fear. Let me give you a simple picture. Imagine a friend who calls you late at night whenever they are upset. At first, you are glad to listen. You want to help. You want to be there. But after months, you notice something. They only call when they need emotional rescue. They do not ask how you are. They do not respect when you say you need rest. They become offended if you do not answer immediately. They speak as though your time belongs to them. And little by little, you begin to feel anxious whenever your phone lights up. You are not anxious because you do not love them. You are anxious because the relationship has taught you that their crisis must become your crisis every time. That is not sustainable. And more importantly, it is not the role God assigned to you. You are allowed to care without becoming someone's entire emotional support system. You are allowed to say, "I love you, but I cannot have this conversation right now." You are allowed to say, "I want to support you, but I need you to speak with someone who can help you more consistently." You are allowed to say, "I cannot make this decision for you." These are not cruel words. When spoken with honesty and humility, they are truthful words. And truth is one of the forms love takes. Ephesians teaches us to speak the truth in love. Notice the order is not love instead of truth. It is truth in love. Without truth, love becomes vague permission. Without love, truth becomes a weapon. God calls you to both. So ask yourself this: can I say no to this person without being made to feel like I am evil? Can I make a decision without being punished with silence or guilt? Can I share an honest concern without fear that the whole relationship will become unstable? Can I rest without being accused of abandoning them? If the answer is consistently no, then the relationship may need a boundary. Not because you are better than them, not because they are beyond grace, but because a relationship that cannot tolerate honesty will eventually make honesty feel dangerous. And when honesty feels dangerous, your soul starts hiding. You smile when you are tired. You agree when you disagree. You say you are fine when you are confused. You give more than you have. You become a version of yourself designed to prevent another person's reaction. That is not the freedom Christ calls you into. Paul writes that we have not been given a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind does not mean a mind that never feels emotion. It means a mind that can remain steady enough to tell the truth. If this first sign speaks to you, if you recognize that your peace has been conditional, let this be your declaration now. Lord, teach me to love without becoming afraid of another person's disappointment. Teach me to say yes with a free heart. Teach me to say no without guilt. Teach me to recognize where I have confused peace with compliance. And teach me to become steady in your love. If you receive that prayer today, write "Teach me to love without fear" in the comments. Now let us go deeper. The second sign that a boundary may be needed is this: they consistently diminish what God is growing in you. Every friendship has seasons of correction. A good friend may question a plan. A wise friend may point out a blind spot. A faithful friend may stop you from making an impulsive choice. Do not confuse correction with opposition. Someone who loves you may tell you something you do not want to hear. But true correction has a different fruit. It is specific, it is humble, it is honest. It gives you room to think. It does not need to humiliate you in order to feel powerful. It does not reduce your identity to one mistake. It does not use your past to make you afraid of your future. Diminishing is different. Diminishing happens when a person repeatedly makes your joy feel embarrassing. You share a new opportunity and they immediately find the flaw. You mention a goal and they tell you why people like you do not succeed at that kind of thing. You talk about healing and they remind you of who you used to be. You begin to make progress and they suddenly become nostalgic for the version of you who needed them more. They may laugh, they may call it realism, they may say they are just trying to protect you, but over time, you notice that their words always leave you, less courageous, less clear, and less able to trust the work God is doing in your life. Let us be careful here. No person is required to celebrate every idea you have. No friend has to agree with every decision. But there is a difference between helping you think and training you to shrink. A healthy friend asks questions that make you wiser. An unhealthy pattern asks questions that make you smaller. A healthy friend says, "Have you considered this risk?" An unhealthy pattern says, "You are not the kind of person who can handle this." A healthy friend says, "I am worried about the pace." An unhealthy pattern says, "You always ruin things when you try to grow." A healthy friend says, "I do not fully understand, but I want to hear why this matters to you." An unhealthy pattern says, "You have changed. You think you are better than everyone now." Do you see the difference? One speaks to your decisions. The other attacks your identity. And when someone consistently attacks your identity, you may begin to believe that growth itself is betrayal. That is a very dangerous lie. Growth is not betrayal. Healing is not pride. Learning to choose differently is not disrespect. Outgrowing a pattern is not an accusation against the people who are comfortable inside it. Sometimes people are not angry because you did anything wrong. Sometimes they are uncomfortable because your growth asks them to face places in their own lives they would rather avoid. But that does not mean they are evil. It means they are human, and your responsibility is not to diagnose their heart. Your responsibility is to notice what the relationship is producing in yours. After you spend time with them, do you feel more grounded in truth? Do you feel challenged in a way that leads to growth? Do you feel free to bring your whole self before God? Or do you feel ashamed of becoming healthier? Do you feel guilty for being hopeful? Do you feel pressure to return to old habits so that others will not feel threatened? Jesus said that we recognize things by their fruit. This is not permission to become a judge of everyone's hidden motives. It is an invitation to pay attention to outcomes. Fruit is what grows over time. What grows in you after repeated contact with this person? Fear, confusion, shame, or courage, patience, humility, peace? That question is often more revealing than a long list of accusations. C.S. Lewis understood that love can become distorted when we demand that another person make us feel secure in ways only God can. When friendship becomes possession, the relationship becomes heavy. Instead of walking beside someone, we begin trying to manage them. Instead of celebrating their calling, we become threatened by it. And that is why your growth may sometimes reveal a problem that was already present. Your growth did not create the tension. It uncovered what the relationship could not bear. That can be sad. It can be surprising. It can even feel like grief. But grief does not always mean you made the wrong choice. Sometimes grief is the cost of letting reality be real. Think about David and Saul. David did not become Saul's enemy because he wanted Saul's throne. David was faithful. He served. He fought battles. He played music to soothe Saul's troubled spirit. But as David's calling became visible, Saul's insecurity became louder. The story is painful because David did not respond by becoming cruel. He did not become a mirror of Saul's fear. He kept honoring God. He kept refusing revenge. But he also stopped pretending that proximity was safe. He did not keep sleeping in the same room with a spear being thrown at him. He fled when he needed to flee. He created distance when distance was necessary. He trusted God to deal with what he could not control. That is a mature picture of boundaries. David did not say, "Saul is nothing to me." He did not deny the pain. He did not pretend the danger was imaginary. But he also did not make Saul's instability the center of his identity. He kept moving toward the life God was asking him to live. Maybe there is a David lesson for you here. You can refuse revenge and still create space. You can pray for someone and still say, "This pattern cannot continue in my life." You can honor the good that existed and still acknowledge the harm that is happening now. You can forgive without returning to the place where you lost your peace. This is especially important for people who have been taught that kindness means never leaving a difficult situation. Kindness does not mean becoming a target for repeated harm. Mercy does not mean making yourself endlessly available to someone who refuses responsibility. Forgiveness does not cancel wisdom. Forgiveness releases the debt to God. Wisdom decides what access is healthy now. Those are not opposites. They belong together. So here is a practical way to respond. When you notice this second sign, do not immediately explain every dream to the person who consistently makes you feel small. Protect what is still tender. That does not mean becoming secretive or arrogant. It means using wisdom about who has earned the right to speak into your next season. Not everyone needs access to your unfinished work. Not everyone needs to know every idea before it is ready. Not everyone needs to be present for every step of your healing. Jesus told stories to crowds, but he shared certain moments only with a smaller circle. There is wisdom in knowing the difference between public kindness and private access. Ask the Lord for people like Jonathan. Jonathan saw David's calling and did not compete with it. He loved David enough to protect him. He could recognize that God was doing something significant in David's life without treating it as a threat to his own worth. That is the kind of friendship to pray for. Not perfect friends, not friends who tell you everything you want to hear, but friends who can be honest without being cruel. Friends who can celebrate your growth without making it about themselves. Friends who can tell you the truth and still preserve your dignity. Friends who make it easier, not harder, to walk faithfully with God. If this speaks to your heart, if you recognize that you have been shrinking to keep a friendship comfortable, do not type a person's name. Do not use this message to accuse someone publicly. Instead, let your prayer be simple. Lord, show me where I have been shrinking to keep a friendship comfortable. Show me the difference between correction and diminishment. Give me the courage to protect the work you are doing in me. If that is your prayer today, write, "Give me courage to grow" in the comments. Now there is a third sign, and this one may be the clearest. A boundary may be needed when the friendship repeatedly asks you to betray your convictions in order to keep belonging. This is the point where the issue becomes deeper than a changed tone or a difficult conversation. This is the point where you begin to realize that closeness with this person is costing you integrity. Maybe they want you to gossip. Maybe they want you to mock someone with them. Maybe they pressure you to spend money you do not have. Maybe they expect you to compromise your marriage, your family, your health, your sobriety, your commitments, or your faith. Maybe they do not ask directly. Maybe it happens through laughter. Maybe it happens through repeated suggestions. Maybe it happens through the quiet sentence, "Do not be so serious." But over time, you notice that being close to them requires you to become divided inside. You are present with them, but you are not at peace. You participate, but you feel the Holy Spirit calling you back to truth. You laugh, but afterward you feel empty. You say yes, but later you wonder why you agreed. That inner division matters. Not because every discomfort means a person is wrong for you. Sometimes God uses relationships to expose pride, impatience, or selfishness in us. But when a relationship consistently requires you to silence your convictions, you must take that seriously. A friend who loves you does not need you to betray your conscience to prove loyalty. A friend who respects you does not demand that you become less faithful in order to remain close. A friend who values you does not make sin feel like the price of admission. In Romans, Paul writes about doing what leads to peace and mutual building up. That is a good question for any relationship. Does this friendship lead toward peace and mutual building up? Does it help you become more truthful? Does it help you become more responsible? Does it help you love God and people more deeply? Or does it consistently pull you into choices that make you hide from yourself? There is a difference between a friend who is struggling and a friendship that is built around compromise. All people struggle, all people fall short. You are not called to abandon every person who is imperfect. If that were the rule, no friendship could survive. But you are not called to make another person's pattern your lifestyle. You can love someone who is struggling without joining them in what is harming them. You can care about someone who is lost without getting lost beside them. You can pray for someone who is in darkness without turning off the light in your own life. This is where the image of salt and light becomes practical. Light does not condemn darkness by shouting at it. Light simply remains light. Salt does not become useful by losing its flavor. You do not help anyone by becoming the version of yourself God is trying to heal. There may be a person in your life who says, "You are judging me," when what they really mean is, "Your boundary makes me uncomfortable." Be humble enough to examine your heart. Never use a boundary as a disguise for superiority, but also be brave enough to recognize that a person may feel judged simply because you are no longer willing to participate. Their discomfort is not always proof that you are wrong. Sometimes it is simply the moment when the old agreement stops working, and old agreements can be powerful. Maybe you both bonded over complaining. Maybe you both bonded over unhealthy relationships. Maybe you both bonded over spending money impulsively. Maybe you both bonded over gossip, late-night drama, shared resentment, or escaping responsibility. When you begin to heal, those old agreements become visible. The friendship may feel unfamiliar because the thing holding it together was not true intimacy. It was shared dysfunction. That is a hard sentence, but it can also be freeing because it helps you understand why leaving a harmful pattern can feel like betrayal, even when it is actually obedience. You are not necessarily leaving a person. You may be leaving an agreement that was hurting both of you. And sometimes, when you stop participating, the other person may choose distance. That will hurt. But you cannot sacrifice your integrity just to keep the appearance of closeness. Jesus was surrounded by people with different motives. Some followed because they were hungry. Some followed because they wanted signs. Some followed because they loved him. He did not force everyone to stay. He spoke truth. He loved. He served. And when people walked away because truth was too difficult, he did not reshape truth to keep the crowd. There is a lesson in that. You are not responsible for making your convictions easy for everyone to accept. You are responsible for living them with humility. Now, I want to pause before we move forward. Do not take one of these signs and make a final decision overnight. Do not walk away from a long friendship because one conversation was disappointing. Do not assume someone is controlling because they expressed hurt. Do not decide they are jealous because they did not react perfectly to your good news. Human beings are complicated. We need grace. We need context. We need honest conversation. We need time. The question is not, have they ever hurt me? The question is, what pattern is growing? And what happens when I bring that pattern into the light? If this third sign speaks to something in your life, if you have felt that inner division, that quiet hollowness after saying yes, when you knew you should have said no. Let this be your declaration. Lord, I want to become whole. I want my outer life and my inner convictions to agree. Give me the courage to live with integrity, not pride, but wholeness. If that is your prayer, write, Lord, make me whole in the comments. So, what do you do when you recognize one of these signs? There are 4 responses God may be inviting you into. The first response is prayer, not performative prayer, not prayer that asks God to prove someone wrong, prayer that makes your own heart honest. Psalm 139 gives us a beautiful pattern. Search me. Before you ask God to expose another person, ask Him to search you. Search my fears. Search my assumptions. Search the ways I have enabled a harmful pattern. Search the ways I have confused need with love. Search the places where I have made another person responsible for my identity. This prayer takes courage, but it creates a clean heart, and a clean heart sees more clearly. The second response is conversation. A boundary without communication can sometimes become confusion. There are situations where direct conversation is not safe or wise. If there is abuse, threats, coercion, or any risk to your physical safety, seek trusted support and protect yourself immediately. But in ordinary relational tension, a calm conversation is often an act of courage. It gives truth a chance. It gives grace a chance. It gives the friendship a chance to become more real. You may say something like this: I value our friendship, and I want to be honest. Lately, I have felt pressure whenever I make choices that you do not agree with. I may not have communicated well, but I need our friendship to have room for honesty and boundaries. Or you may say, when I shared this with you, the response hurt me. I am not asking you to agree with every decision I make, but I need to be able to talk about my life without feeling mocked or diminished. Or, I care about you. I also need to step back from conversations that turn into gossip, pressure, or criticism. I want to be part of relationships that help both of us become healthier. Notice what these sentences do. They do not attack motives. They do not announce that you know everything in another person's heart. They do not use spiritual language as a weapon. They describe your experience. They name your need. They set a boundary. And then they leave space for a response. The response will tell you something important. A healthy person may feel uncomfortable, but they will eventually become curious. They may say, I did not realize that. Help me understand. They may apologize. They may need time, but they will show some willingness to care about the effect they are having on you. An unhealthy pattern often responds differently. It may deny every feeling you have. It may turn the conversation into an attack on your character. It may bring up unrelated mistakes. It may punish honesty with silence. It may accuse you of being selfish simply because you named a need. Use that response as information, not as a label. A relationship cannot become safe if truth is always punished. The third response is distance. Distance is not always rejection. Sometimes, distance is the only space where you can hear God again. Distance may mean you stop sharing every detail. It may mean you change how often you meet. It may mean you stop taking every call. It may mean you leave spaces that consistently pull you into anxiety or gossip. It may mean you choose to invest more in friendships where honesty is safe. Distance is not punishment when it is done without contempt. It is stewardship. You are responsible for the condition of your soul. You are not responsible for making every relationship remain exactly as it was. The fourth response is forgiveness. This is the one people often misunderstand. Forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness does not mean you trust someone who has not shown trustworthiness. Forgiveness does not mean you bring them back into the same level of access. Forgiveness means you stop demanding that revenge heal you. You release the person into God's hands. You stop rehearsing their wrongs as proof that you are right. You refuse to let what they did become the center of your future. You allow God to carry the final judgment so you can carry your own life again. This can take time. Forgiveness is sometimes a decision you must renew many times, but it is not weakness. It is freedom. C.S. Lewis wrote deeply about love, suffering, grief, and the complexity of the human heart. He did not offer a shallow picture of faith, where pain disappears because you use the right words. He knew grief. He knew silence. He knew that the Christian life is not escape from difficult emotions. It is learning to bring those emotions into the light of truth. That is what you are doing now. You are not pretending this friendship did not matter. You are not pretending you are unaffected. You are bringing the relationship before God and asking, what is mine to carry? What is mine to release? What is mine to confront? What is mine to forgive? That is a mature prayer. And God honors hearts that seek wisdom more than drama. James says that if any of us lacks wisdom, we may ask God, who gives generously. You do not have to have all the answers tonight. You do not have to know exactly what the friendship will become. You only need enough wisdom for the next faithful step. Maybe the next step is to stop reacting. Maybe it is to write down the pattern. Maybe it is to talk with a trusted pastor, counselor, or mentor who is not invested in the conflict. Maybe it is to have one honest conversation. Maybe it is to step back. Maybe it is to apologize for your part. Maybe it is to forgive. Maybe it is to stop reopening a door. God is asking you to close with peace. Whatever the next step is, do not let fear choose it for you. Fear usually chooses one of two extremes. It either tells you to cling to a relationship at any cost, or it tells you to cut everyone off before they can hurt you again. Wisdom chooses neither extreme. Wisdom remains soft enough to love and strong enough to protect. This is why boundaries are holy. They are not walls built out of bitterness. They are clear lines built out of truth. A healthy boundary says, I will not hate you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you comfortable. A healthy boundary says, I can care about your pain without making it my responsibility to fix every part of your life. A healthy boundary says, I can forgive you without giving you the same access you had before. A healthy boundary says, I am willing to have an honest conversation, but I am not willing to keep having the same harmful pattern. A healthy boundary says, God is teaching me to love with wisdom. There may be someone listening who is thinking, what if I am the friend who has been difficult? What if you have been afraid of another person's growth? What if you have used guilt because you did not know how to say you felt left behind? What if you have reacted coldly because someone's success made you face your own disappointment? Do not run from that conviction. Conviction is not condemnation. It may be an invitation. You can apologize. You can ask questions. You can learn to celebrate another person without making their growth a verdict on your life. You can become a safer friend. You can say, I realize I have made this difficult for you. I am sorry. I want to learn how to love you better. That kind of humility can restore what pride would destroy. And perhaps that is one of the deepest messages today. Boundaries are not only for leaving. Sometimes boundaries become the truth that makes healing possible. Sometimes a friendship survives because someone was brave enough to say, this is hurting me. Sometimes a relationship becomes stronger because both people stop pretending. Sometimes Distance becomes a doorway to respect, and sometimes, yes, a friendship ends. Even then, the ending does not have to turn you into a bitter person. You can bless what was good. You can grieve what was lost. You can learn from what happened. You can release the version of the relationship that no longer exists. And you can make room for the people who will meet you in truth. Maybe you are afraid that boundaries will make you lonely. That is understandable. Sometimes they do create a quiet season. When you stop carrying a relationship alone, the silence becomes visible. When you stop chasing people who will not meet you halfway, you may feel the empty room more sharply. When you stop making yourself smaller, some people may not know how to relate to you. But loneliness is not proof that the boundary was wrong. Sometimes loneliness is the space where God rebuilds your understanding of love. It is the place where you learn that peace is not the same as being needed. It is the place where you learn that worth is not the same as being included. It is the place where you learn that you can be alone without being abandoned. And from that place, you can form healthier connections. Not connections built on fear. Not connections built on overgiving. Not connections built on rescuing. But connections built on truth, mutuality, faithfulness, and freedom. Remember Ruth. Ruth did not force a future. She walked faithfully in the field available to her. She did not manipulate Boaz. She did not create a false identity to get his attention. She remained loyal, humble, and active in the work before her, and the story unfolded in ways she could not control. The lesson is not that every person will receive a perfect relationship tomorrow. The lesson is that faithfulness in your field matters. You do not have to chase every relationship. You do not have to force every door. You do not have to make a person choose you by sacrificing yourself. Be faithful in the field God has given you. Be honest. Be wise. Be open. Be guarded in the right way. And trust that what is truly for your good will not require you to lose your soul in order to receive it. Before we pray, carry these 3 questions into your quiet place with God. Do not answer them quickly. The first question, what is the actual pattern, not just the fear? Write it down. Name it without exaggeration. Be honest without accusation. The second question, what happens in me after I spend time with this person? Do I become more whole, more truthful, more peaceful, more able to love? Or do I become smaller, more anxious, more ashamed, more divided? The third question, what is the next faithful step? Not the final answer, not the whole future. The next faithful step, God rarely asks you to solve your whole life in one night, but He does invite you to take the next truthful step. If you are ready to take that step, not out of anger, not to prove anyone wrong, but because you are placing your heart back into God's hands, let this be your declaration. Lord, give me discernment without fear. Write that in the comments if it speaks to you. Discernment without fear. Truth without cruelty. Boundaries without bitterness. Forgiveness without self-abandonment. Love without control. That is the kind of freedom God is building in you. Father, you see the person listening right now. You see the friendship that has become confusing. You see the messages they have reread. You see the conversations they wish had gone differently. You see the disappointment they have tried to hide. You see the places where they have felt guilty for needing space. You see the places where they have been afraid to speak. I ask that you bring truth into every place of confusion, not fear, not accusation, not pride, truth. Show them what is real. Show them the difference between a temporary season and a harmful pattern. Show them where patience is needed. Show them where honesty is needed. Show them where a boundary is needed. Give them wisdom that is gentle, clear, and steady. Protect them from the need to control what they cannot control. Protect them from the temptation to call every discomfort betrayal. Protect them from the fear that makes them cling to what is hurting them. And protect them from bitterness when they must let something change. Teach them to speak truth in love. Teach them to forgive without forgetting wisdom. Teach them to keep their hearts soft without leaving them unguarded. For the person who has been shrinking to keep peace, restore courage. For the person who has been carrying too much, restore rest. For the person who has been afraid to set a boundary, give them a sound mind. For the person who has been wounded by friendship, bring healing where trust has been damaged. And for the person who realizes they have hurt someone else, give them humility to apologize and strength to change. Lord, build in every listener a life that is not controlled by the opinions of people. Build a life rooted in your love. A life where peace does not depend on everyone's approval. A life where love and truth walk together. A life where the right people are welcomed with gratitude and the wrong patterns are released without hatred. We place every friendship before you. We place every unanswered question before you. We place every painful memory before you. And we ask you to lead us into freedom. In Jesus' name, Amen. Chosen one, you do not have to become suspicious to become wise. You do not have to become cold to become protected. You do not have to hate someone in order to accept that the relationship has changed. Let God make you clear. Let Him make you calm. Let Him teach you the difference between distance and danger. Let Him teach you the difference between love and fear. Let Him teach you how to keep your heart open without leaving it unguarded. The people God is growing in your life will not require you to disappear in order to belong. They will not need your silence in order to feel powerful. They will not demand that you compromise your convictions to prove that you care. They will make room for truth. They will respect your boundaries. They will be able to celebrate the work God is doing in you. And you too will become that kind of friend. Not perfect, not always easy, but honest, faithful, humble, free. The next step may be small. Take it anyway. God is with you in the conversation. He is with you in the boundary. He is with you in the grief. He is with you in the silence. After you stop chasing what cannot meet you in truth, and He is faithful to lead you toward relationships where love does not require you to lose yourself. Stay close to Him. Stay honest. Stay kind. And let wisdom guard what grace is healing.